I am Michelle,
And I am Isaiah.
and this is Shifting Veils, where we talk about the unexplained, possibly paranormal, and always strange.
In this week's episode, we are going to break from our normal structure and indulge in some storytelling. If you enjoy your time here with us, give us a like, share, and follow. And don't forget, if you have your own spooky story, send us an email.
History keeps a ledger of monsters, not just the kind that wear teeth and claws, but the ones we invent out of fear, out of superstition, out of the need to explain why the night sometimes presses its face to the window. In the 16th century, the ink in that ledger was thick with dread. People feared sin because sin was not simply wrongdoing, it was a choice that could echo in the afterlife forever. They feared the fires that followed it, the hell that smelled of sulfur and punishment. They feared the unquiet dead, not ghosts, no, but bodies that refused to stay cold. And perhaps most of all, they feared how easy it was to invite something like that into your life. A small sin, a wrong burial, a slip of the blade and the wrong kind of death. The age had rules for the living, and rules for the dead, and both were enforced by trembling mortal hands. It is in this tremor of the world that we find ourselves in Breslau, in the year 1591. The streets here are narrow, the bridges low and arched. In the morning, fog rides the river and doesn't leave until the sun insists, and even then, sometimes it lingers, caught in alleyways like an unwelcome guest. A philosopher named Henry Moore would write the story down in an antidote to atheism. Imagine that, a book meant to shore up faith against disbelief, and in its pages the account of a vampire. He could have left it to rumor, but some tales want to be fixed in ink. They want to breathe a little longer. The story begins with a shoemaker. No name survives him, just his craft. Leather under his fingernails, thread biting into calloused fingers, the steady rhythm of a life marked in stitched soles and mended seams. And then one day, an end, by his own hand, his cut throat, the house falling silent around him. It was his wife who found him. Imagine that moment, the sudden weight of knowing that no one else is coming to help you understand what you're seeing. She stood in the doorway, seeing not just her husband, but the way the world would change if this truth was told. In Breslau, suicide wasn't simply death. It was a stain. It shamed the dead, shamed the living, barred a soul from burial in consecrated ground. And shame was a currency in those days, worth more than silver in the wrong hands. So she decided on a lie, a gentle one, if such a thing exists. She washed him in a basin, the water clouding pink. She dressed him in clean clothes, hands moving as if she could will the truth into something softer. And she told the world he had died of a stroke. Fate, not choice. Pity, not condemnation. Despite church law, the shoemaker was given a Christian burial. Words were spoken over the grave, a cross planted in the earth. The wife walked home with her secret sealed in the soil. Graves are meant to be doors locked from both sides. For a while the lock held. Then came the whispers. Someone saw him by the river at dusk, pale as a candle stub. His step wrong, as though he was listening to a music no one else could hear. Another spotted him in the market at midday, sunlight touching him without warmth, his eyes deep set and hooded. More often he was seen at night, in the shadowed threshold of a tavern, in the hush of a church porch, or lingering at the mouth of an alley. Those who met his gaze found it difficult to describe what was wrong about it, only that it followed them home. The city did what cities do. It laughed, it ignored, it kept to its trades and errands, but the strangeness did not stay harmless. Animals were found with wounds that defied easy explanation. Children woke gasping, clutching their throats, claiming a weight had pressed them in their sleep. People began to carry garlic and iron, whispering words that were half prayer, half spell. And then came the day he was seen in a tavern, standing in the crush of drinkers, as if he were one of them, only not. The sight tore through whatever denial the town had left. Panic moved in like weather. Finally, the authorities acted. They had ignored the rules once, allowed a suicide into holy ground, but this was different. This was not rumor now, but something the town could no longer breathe around. At dawn they dug. The earth was damp, reluctant to give him back. The coffin straps creaked, the air shifted, and some said the body inside looked flushed, as if it had been out for a walk. The mouth glistened. Others refused to look at all, murmuring scripture under their breath. There was no ritual now, only procedure. They cut him apart, the sound of the work nearly swallowed by the morning fog. Each blow was final and intent, if not in sound. Pieces went into the fire, the flames snapping and spitting as if rejecting their task. The smell was heavy, bitter. When nothing but ash remained, they gathered it into sacks. Down to the river they went. One by one, the sacks were opened. Ash spilled into the current, swirling for a moment before disappearing into the darker waters. The men watched until the last of it was gone, standing there in the quiet, waiting, perhaps, for the river to speak. Breslau breathed again. Markets reopened. Children ran through the streets. Doors were left ajar in the heat of the day. People said the bloodshed had ended. The nights have long memories, and rivers keep what is given to them, even as they carry it away.
If you traveled west from Breslau in the summer of 1592, the roads would take you past fields that smelled of rye and wet earth, through pockets of forest where the shade pressed close to your shoulders, and finally into a market town that seemed, on the surface, as safe as any other. But by that year's end, its name would be spoken with the same unease that had settled over Breslau the year before, because another vampire had risen. His name, unlike the shoemaker's, survives history. Johann Kuntz, a man of standing and aldermen respected, the kind whose word could tilt the scale in civic matters. But even titles cannot shield a man from mischance. The trouble began in a pasture, under a sun neither too warm nor too cold. Kuntz was near a gelding, a proud, high-spirited animal, broad in the flank, sharp in the hoof. Accounts differ on the exact moment. Some say the horse lashed out at his head. Others claim the blow landed between the legs, robbing him of breath and dignity in a single instant. Whatever the truth, the injury was severe, and from that day his mind began to fray. Delirium crept in. He muttered to shadows. He laughed at hours when laughter curdled the air. Soon the whispers began, that Johannes Kuntz was not merely wounded, but touched by something darker, that the devil had taken interest in him. It was on his deathbed that the final strangest turn came. The room was dim, the shutters drawn against the midday glare. A few attendants lingered near, perhaps to offer prayers, perhaps to confirm the moment of passing. Then without sound, a black cat appeared. Some say it leapt from the window-sill. Others say that it materialized at the foot of the bed. What is agreed upon is this. The creature bounded forward and set upon Kuntz's face. Raking claws down his cheeks and across his brow until the skin was a ruin. Gasps, shouting, hands fumbling to pull the cat away, but by then the alderman lay still, his features scored with the animal's fury. The body was laid out, the burial made, and for a handful of nights the town was quiet. Then the sightings began. Not shrouded figures or shapes in fog, no. The reports were blunt and detailed. Johannes Kuntz seen walking the lanes at odd hours. His step deliberate, his gaze hard to meet, and stranger still, Hoofprints stamped into the snow where he'd been spotted, though no horse was near. What had once been whispered became the town's common talk. A woman claimed he'd attacked her in the dark, pressing close, his grip like iron. The local vicar told of waking in his own bed to feel himself being squeezed, as if by some invisible vice that sought to wring the life out of him. 5 months this went on, 5 months in which the town's winter was not defined by frostbite or famine, but by an absence of safety. Men carried knives to the privy. Women barred their windows even at noon. The snow itself became suspect, for it seemed to record visits from something that could not be warded off by prayer alone. In July, the air heavy, the fields green to bursting, the townsfolk gathered. Enough had been endured. They would treat this as Breslau had treated its own curse. The grave was opened. The soil gave way easily as if it too wished to be rid of its tenant. When the coffin was drawn up and its lid pried away, the crowd leaned in, and a hush fell. Kuntz's body lay whole, the flesh unspoiled, the skin still flushed faintly with color. No smell of decay. When one brave man, or perhaps a fool, cut into the flesh of his leg, fresh blood welled up, bright and undeniable. The murmurs that followed were not of grief, they were the grim, practical words of a sentence already decided. They took the body from its box and set to work. The limbs were separated, each blow of the blade echoing like a door slammed on the past month's terror. The pieces were fed to the fire, the flames leaping high as if tasting the strange vitality in what they consumed. When nothing but ash remained, it was scattered, some say on the wind, others into running water, and as in Breslau, the people declared the matter finished. But endings are only what we call them. The road between Breslau and this little town now held 2 stories of the dead refusing to stay put. And such stories, as Henry Moore might tell you, have a way of walking farther than you'd ever expect.